Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be participating in your conference, albeit virtually, once again this year. I'd like to thank our colleagues in the U.S. for hosting this virtual event and thank the IIC for bringing us together. The conference will feature discussions on a number of important and topical issues, and it's an important opportunity to learn from each other. I'd like to take a few minutes first to update you on some of the issues that we've been working on in Canada to maintain a world-class communication system that serves the public interest. I want to start by highlighting how we're building confidence in the telecommunications system and helping to protect Canadians from threats and bad actors. Much like consumers in America and elsewhere, Canadians have been frustrated by the unwanted calls they receive. Bad actors, who have no interest in following the rules, have been contributing to an erosion of confidence in the telecommunications system. We've been tackling this problem head-on with the help of the industry and with the help of our enforcement partners through a variety of approaches. On November 30th, Stir-Shaken technology will become a mandatory condition of license for telecommunications service providers in Canada. The technology, as I'm sure you know, will enable service providers to confirm whether a caller's identity can be trusted by authenticating and verifying the caller ID information for Internet Protocol-based voice calls. In turn, the framework will empower Canadians to determine which calls are legitimate and worth answering, and which need to be treated with some caution. I was happy to conduct a trial of the Stir-Shaken technology with the former, then chair of the Federal Communications Commission, Ajit Pai, in December 2019. Ours was the first official cross-border call made using the technology, and it's a prime example of how we at the CRTC are working together with our counterparts in the United States to clamp down on the use of caller ID spoofing. The newly appointed FCC Chair, Jessica Rosenworcel, has spoken quite passionately on this issue, and she and I have already confirmed our commitment to cooperate further. Most people likely perceive spoof calls as a nuisance, but the truth is they're much more than that. They're gateways for criminals to dupe hard-working people out of their money and out of their sensitive data. And they're relentless. An average of 2,100 robocalls are sent to consumers in the United States every second. And that's why we're acting to bring confidence back to the system through Stir-Shaken and to develop a process to trace nuisance calls back to their points of origin. We've also required service providers to either provide their subscribers with the ability to filter calls or to implement a call blocking system. One company in Canada has taken call blocking a step further by making innovative use of artificial intelligence. Bell Canada has applied to the CRTC to permanently block calls that are confirmed as fraudulent on the company's network. That way, those calls will never reach subscribers. Bell has been testing this technology over the past 2 years, and thus far, it has blocked more than 1.1 billion calls. That's B with a billion, between July 2020 and October 2021. We're currently reviewing Bell's application, and I expect we'll issue a decision soon. I have to say I'm pleased to see that the industry is deploying technology to address challenges that are in effect created by technology. The landscape of threats to consumers is shifting though. It's shifting constantly, which is why I wanted to bring your attention to another initiative that is very much at the front and center for us at the CRTC these days. And it relates to how we're using tools like Canada's anti-spam legislation, or CASL, as we call it for short, to protect Canadians from the darker and more dangerous elements of the web. Our work under CASL has shifted a fair bit since the legislation came into effect in 2014. In those earliest days, we focused on ensuring Canadians didn't receive marketing emails and text messages without their consent. Yes, we're still doing that today, but our work has evolved to also protect Canadians from much more harmful activities that expose their personal data to theft. We recently conducted an investigation involving much more nefarious violations under CASL, such as phishing for Canadians' personal and financial information and targeting established Canadian brands and financial institutions. The full scope of the problem is expansive, and we must work closely with our partners in the US and elsewhere, and in the industry, with law enforcement, to continue to protect Canadians in this environment. We took a step to that effect in January when we launched a consultation on a proposed framework to address botnets. In it, we asked whether there's a need for telecommunications service providers to be able to block malicious traffic at the network level, and what safeguards would need to be put in place to ensure privacy, transparency, and effectiveness. Our consultation closed in the spring, and we're now analyzing the public record with a view to issuing a decision next year. Carrying on this theme of protecting Canadians, next year will be a significant year for 911 service. March will mark the launch of the next generation 911 voice services. The change, which will be subtle at first, paves the way for 911 service to move to an IP-based system. And that, in turn, means that Canadians could eventually be able to relay photos and videos of an emergency incident across the 911 platform, and to make medical data available to first responders even before they arrive at a scene. The CRTC has also been working with industry to implement new smartphone technology to help the 911 operators and first responders better locate individuals who use their smartphones to call 911, and to enhance location information, and to even pinpoint a caller's location inside of a building. And we've required wireless service providers to configure their networks to deliver this potentially life-saving information, even if the person making the call does not have a data plan. There's more in store. The Commission is examining whether a simple 3-digit number to access mental health crisis and suicide prevention services should be implemented. This, of course, would be similar to the 988 code in the United States. We've opened a public consultation in June, and we've asked whether there's a need for a similar 3-digit number to support Canadians who need mental health intervention services. The 3-digit number could direct the caller to the appropriate mental health crisis or suicide prevention service in their area. Our consultation asked a number of questions about a number of technical issues, including how much time it might take to launch such a service, how it should be deployed, whether Canadians should be able to send text messages to the service, and whether a caller's location information will automatically be provided to the call center. We're studying the public record on this matter as we speak, and the decision will be forthcoming in the new year. I should add that our work in reaching these decisions on these and important other matters is, as always, dependent on the input we receive. The opinions of stakeholders, whether they represent industry groups, public interest groups, or just everyday Canadians, is essential to our work. We're mindful of the ways in which a diversity of opinions can positively influence the public record. And that's why we're looking at new ways of consulting with Canadians to ensure that we hear from the widest possible cross-section of stakeholders, including Indigenous people and ethnocultural communities. We're working to understand how best to consult people from these historically underrepresented groups in our processes so that we can be assured, and the public can be assured, that our decisions take into account the broad spectrum of the public interest. I'd like to end today by talking about one of our recent decisions in the telecommunications space. Despite the size of our country, the large wireless service providers have built extensive networks that typically score highly in speed tests. And, as many others, they're currently investing significant sums of capital to build 5G networks. Where we've not performed as well is in the provision of affordable options for consumers. Canadians have clearly told us that they expect lower prices for their services. Mobile virtual network operators, MVNOs as they're commonly known, have not developed in the Canadian marketplace as they have elsewhere. There's been virtually no MVNO activity that would provide additional competitive options to consumers. Earlier this year, we announced a new policy framework for mobile wireless services. And this policy will help lay the foundation for the continued growth of smaller service providers and new entrants into the market, and will help support sustainable competition. Through our proceeding, we concluded that the country's largest mobile wireless providers exercise market power, and that retail prices are higher than they should be, and those that would prevail in a normally fully competitive market. Our framework opens the door to MVNOs by requiring our dominant companies to provide access to their networks to certain telecommunications providers. This in turn will enable them to get to the market faster in order to offer new services, more choice, and affordable options to consumers, particularly in areas of the country where wireless facilities and competition are limited. There's a great deal of interest in the implementation of this MVNO access service, and we have a process underway to review the associated terms and conditions. Our decision also set an expectation that the largest providers offer low-cost and occasional use plans to customers that simply aren't big data users. It also requires those companies to file semi-annual reports to measure the effectiveness of those plans. While we're currently reviewing the first reports, I remain of the view that the industry must do more to address the affordability of mobile wireless services, and in particular, their accessibility and adoption by elderly and lower income Canadians. Well, that was a quick update on some of our recent activities. Our work is all about building confidence and certainty in the market and ensuring Canadians have access to a world-class communication system. Sometimes that means equipping Canadians so that they're able to make good choices, and other times that means applying regulation to improve outcomes for Canadians. But we can't act alone on any of these fronts. Our work is at its best when it's complemented by supporting efforts from industry and when it draws from the richest and most comprehensive public record possible. I wish you a good conference, and I look forward to the day when we can meet again in person. Thank you, and good day.